that be a softening then of the psyche? You talk about martial arts. I mean, the real power is in
Sure, yeah.
flexibility, isn't it, and openness.
From the consensus point of view, it's a hardening. From our point of view, dare I say, it is indeed a softening. Yeah, you're quite right.
Hmm. Okay, well let's press on because I know that you and I between us could spend the whole show, even if it's a 2 hour show, just talking about psychedelics, and we
How
don't want
many
to do
questions
that.
are there, by the way?
Well, there's 64, as you know. So, but you can. We're not going to get
So
through
how
all
many in my in my
64.
in my section?
Oh, as many as you like, or as few as we like. I mean, if
Right.
you, yeah.
It's because at this rate, it's going to be an hour a question, but it's whether we do two and it's 2 good hours, that'll do me.
Well, as I say, they're questions. I've tried to make questions that are subjects unto themselves, and we could easily spend a whole show
Mm.
talking about any of these. But, and I'd be quite happy to talk with you about psychedelics the whole time. But I think that
Yeah.
probably our listeners would be curious to hear your take on other stuff. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's move on. Yeah.
okay, new number between 1 and 64.
39.
Okay, that's 3 times 13 is 39, and that is creative imagination an active part of your work, and how?
Again, yes. I think it has to be. Again, I've kind of got some writing I sort of constructed on this, where I went back and looked at who arguably are some of the most creative people and musicians and artists and so on, who the creative process is very, very essential, whereas we can slip back into the comfortable slippers of sort of academic approach from time to time. If
Hmm.
you're a painter, you can't really do that. It's just creative juice or death, really.
Right.
Um, and when you look at the people who really excel in what they do, they seem to have this channel open all the time, what I call uplink, and
Hmm.
that's the creative process. And without that, things lack color and they lack grace and they lack elegance and they lack spark. So I'm pretty critical of hardcore conspiracy types who just moan on and on about how shit everything is and how everything's controlled and there's nothing we can do about it. It simply isn't true.
Hmm.
It's a stage, and without the necessary creative field uplink, I think it's very difficult to go past the obstacle of the conspiracy or the obstacle of what I call the control system.
Hmm.
So creativity is a key bit. So, I can envisage one day, within the alternative movement, you'll have kind of a rehabilitation centers for people who've got stuck in the conspiracy, and they'll be having painting classes, doing watercolors outside just to loosen that muscle up again.
Right. Well, yeah, this is definitely an area that I mean, I've also experienced the frustration that you're describing with other researchers, and this insistence always on a nuts and bolts view, and not necessarily literally a nuts and bolt view.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. Yeah,
It might be a more subtle kind of nuts and bolts thing where everything has to be somehow shoehorned into consensus reality as we know it, even though to me the essence of these investigations and researches is to lead us to the rabbit hole, and then to go down the rabbit hole, and to use whatever it is, discoveries of conspiracies or UFO activity or occult systems, all the rest of it, to provide or to discover a new context by which to experience this reality.
yeah,
Um, and
yeah. I think one central point. Sorry to interrupt. One
mm,
central point is that the individuation of the journey of the unfoldment of the discovery is quite a trap in itself. And one of the things that I caught from Jake's interview with you was his view on, the enemy being an aspect of self, which is a very fundamental part of my way of looking at things.
mhm,
And I think that almost exclusively when you name names, which I won't do here, but I'm sorely tempted from time to time,
mhm,
of big name people who are really mired in the conspiracy and are quite good at producing facts and figures, But when you listen to them, they take energy from you. They never ever give.
mm,
They never ever create. They just take energy and they draw it from you, and it's kind of unconsciously vampiric.
mhm,
And those people all have one thing in common, which is they have no sense of oneness, no belief in the connectedness of things, no experience of it, more importantly. And again, I think it's a side road that one goes down, and then you forget how to get back again. So
mm,
it's something that you need to take a look at, you need to visit, you need to immerse yourself in even. But once you've done that, kind of like Robert Anton Wilson style, you need to then extract yourself from it and remember what you were doing when you first started, which was just looking at that, yeah. Because there's other things to look at too.
mhm. Yeah, Robert Ant Wilson seems a very good example of what I'm talking about and what's behind this question, because he always made it very clear that he was creating narratives in the process of
Yes, yeah.
investigating narratives that already exist. It's like a gonzo occultism is a term that I use, and I've attempted to do the same with my work. And to it's similar to something that Oliver Stone said about his movie JFK. Not that I'm a fan of Oliver Stone, by the way, but I think it was valid. He made a valid observation about what he was doing there. Was he said that the Warren Report was a myth in the profane sense, a lie, a misinformation,
Yes.
a fabrication, a false narrative, and so he was simply creating an alternate myth to juxtapose with that myth, and I think that it's valid because um, if you're going to investigate the JFK assassination, for example, and try and turn it into a narrative, there's no way to avoid filling in the gaps with imaginative thinking because we simply don't have all the information. So we actually have to weave a narrative just to pull all the strands together. And so the looser and more flexible and more open we can keep that narrative, in other words, the more um, we allow the mythic or the fictional element to be present and to be obvious as it was in Wilson's work, the freer both the reader and the researcher is to kind of integrate that with their own personal myth as
Yeah, I think
something
I
that's
think I observed that too, yeah. I think there's a tendency early on that when you encounter these things, you want to pin it down to your current ability to put this within a linear narrative, as you put it.
mm,
And by the sheer nature of the journey, when you start off, your narrative is going to be one-dimensional. And as you start to uncover things, you are tempted and deceived, self-deceived, to fit those pins into the narrative that you started off with, whereas you should extract that to some extent and have it loose in the background with, plot points and plot turns and plot twists, but the story is being written very much as it goes along, like that fantasy story, never-ending story with the blank book.
mm-hmm,
Jake will probably quite like things like that, but the story imagines itself into existence, and the interdependency of the reader and the read are obviously apparent.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is, I mean, quantum mechanics is allowing this concept to filter down into consensus reality, into our interpretation system, but it's
Yeah,
still a
absolutely.
long way, isn't it? And generally the assumption is for all of us, even those of us who are attempting to create our own uh, perspective, our own interpretation systems, the idea that consensus reality is fixed is almost unshakable. It's almost unescapable. This sense that events are what they are, and if they happen, they can only have, there can only be one version of events. That history is history, and somehow it's fixed like a block of ice. Well, actually, I use the metaphor block of ice because to suggest that it isn't fixed, but it gives us the impression that it is fixed. The block of ice seems as solid, as rock hard, and as impenetrable as an actual rock. But of course, change the temperature, and that block of ice starts to melt, and then we can actually see that it can change
Yeah,
form
nice image. Yeah,
and actually become not only change form but become a different medium entirely because ice is actually water and then potentially even steam. And this is a model that it's actually just the first time I've tried to express it, because I was planning to do a show around this, but the past is a block of ice, the present is the flow, is the stream, and the future is steam. And so this is like an evolution of consciousness, that we're kind of stuck in the past, in this view that everything is fixed, is this ice, that we can chip away